On a cold December night in Dublin, Ireland, a young man walked home from his office Christmas party, unaware that he was about to become one of the country's most enduring mysteries. Trevor Deely was 22 years old, working in the IT department of Bank of Ireland Asset Management, and had his whole life ahead of him. But as he made his way through the storm-lashed streets of Dublin in the early hours of December 8, 2000, something happened that would leave his family searching for answers for more than 2 decades. Trevor had grown up in Naas, County Kildare, the youngest of 4 siblings in what was described as a close-knit family. His parents, Michael and Ann Deely, had watched their son navigate the typical challenges of young adulthood. After starting a business course at Waterford Institute of Technology, Trevor had dropped out in his second year, but he didn't let that setback define him. Instead, he completed a computer course in Dublin and landed a job at Bank of Ireland Asset Management in May 1999. By all accounts, he was settling into adult life well, living in the Renoir complex on Serpentine Avenue in Ballsbridge with flatmates and building a career in the growing tech sector. Just weeks before his disappearance, Trevor had done something that spoke to his adventurous spirit and perhaps his romantic nature. He had flown to Alaska to visit a girl he had met during the summer when she was holidaying in Ireland. The trip was made possible by a friend who worked as a long-haul flight attendant and could get him what was essentially a free ticket. It was the kind of grand gesture that young people make when they're following their hearts, flying thousands of miles to see someone who had caught their attention during a brief encounter in Dublin. The Christmas party on December 7, 2000, started like any other office celebration. Trevor and his colleagues began the evening with drinks at Copperface Jack's, then moved on to the Hilton Hotel before ending up at Buck Whaley's nightclub on Lower Leeson Street. It was a Thursday night, and the festivities continued well into the early hours of Friday morning. At around 3:25 a.m., Trevor decided it was time to head home. He said his goodbyes and stepped out into what would prove to be a particularly brutal night weather-wise. Dublin was being battered by a severe storm, with wind gusts reaching 60 to 70 miles per hour. The weather was so bad that it seemed to mirror the chaos that was about to unfold. Making matters worse for anyone trying to get home, there was a taxi strike in progress, meaning that Trevor's options for transportation were severely limited. He would have to walk the considerable distance from Lower Leeson Street to his apartment in Ballsbridge, a journey that would take him through the heart of Dublin's business district. About 10 minutes after leaving the nightclub, Trevor made a decision that would later prove crucial to understanding his final hours. Instead of heading straight home, he detoured to his office building on Leeson Street. He called security and was let into the building, where he encountered Carl Pender, a colleague who was working the night shift. Trevor made himself a cup of tea and chatted with Carl while he checked his emails and made notes about things he needed to do when he returned to work the following morning. It was the kind of responsible behavior that characterized Trevor. Even after a night of celebration, he was thinking ahead to his work responsibilities. Trevor also retrieved an umbrella from the office, a practical decision given the terrible weather conditions outside. At 4 a.m., he left the building and continued his journey home toward Ballsbridge. As he walked, he called a friend in Naas and left a voicemail message. His friend would later describe the message as saying something like, "Hi Glenn, I've missed you there. Just on my way home. All going good. I'll talk to you tomorrow." It was a casual, upbeat message from someone who seemed to be in good spirits, despite the late hour and harsh weather. Tragically, his friend deleted the message, not thinking it would ever be significant, and investigators never attempted to retrieve it. What Trevor didn't know as he left his office building was that his movements were being watched. Security cameras captured footage that would later become central to the investigation into his disappearance. The CCTV showed that a man dressed in black had been waiting outside the gates of the bank for approximately 30 minutes before Trevor arrived. When Trevor approached the building, this mysterious figure engaged him in what appeared to be a brief conversation. The exchange lasted only a couple of minutes, but it would become one of the most analyzed pieces of evidence in the case. 2 minutes after Trevor entered the bank building, 2 more men arrived at the gate. These men were later identified and cleared as colleagues of Trevor's, but the man in black remained a person of intense interest to investigators. By the time Trevor left the building with his umbrella, the man in black was no longer visible outside the gates. Where he had gone and why he had been waiting there for so long remained unanswered questions that would haunt the investigation. The last confirmed sighting of Trevor Deely occurred at 4 a.m., captured on CCTV footage from what was then an AIB bank on the corner of Bagot Street Bridge and Haddington Road. The camera showed Trevor walking past the bank in the direction of his flat, umbrella in hand, making his way through the deserted streets of Dublin. He appeared to be walking normally, showing no signs of distress or awareness that he might be in danger. About 30 seconds after Trevor passed by, another figure appeared on the same camera, a man dressed in black walking in the same direction. Initially, investigators believed this might be the same man who had spoken to Trevor outside his office building, and the timing seemed too coincidental to ignore. The idea that Trevor was being followed added a sinister dimension to his disappearance, and suggested that whatever happened to him might not have been random. However, years later, this assumption would be challenged as new technology allowed for better analysis of the footage. After Trevor passed the AIB bank camera, he simply vanished. There were no more CCTV sightings, no witnesses who came forward to say they had seen him, and no trace of where he might have gone. It was as if he had been swallowed up by the storm-ravaged Dublin night, leaving behind only questions and the grainy images from security cameras that would be scrutinized for years to come. The delay in discovering Trevor's disappearance proved to be crucial in hampering the investigation. Because it had been such a late night, his absence from work on Friday morning didn't immediately raise alarm bells. His colleagues assumed he was sleeping off the effects of the Christmas party, which would have been perfectly understandable given the circumstances. Additionally, Trevor's flatmates were away for the weekend, so they had no idea that he had never made it home. It wasn't until Monday morning, when Trevor failed to show up for work, that people began to worry. When Trevor's workplace contacted his family to ask about his whereabouts, the Deelys quickly realized that something was seriously wrong. After confirming that no one had heard from Trevor over the weekend, they reported him as a missing person, but by then, precious time had been lost. Time that might have been crucial in determining what had happened to him during those early morning hours. The Deely family's response to Trevor's disappearance was nothing short of extraordinary. Detective Sergeant Michael Fitzgerald, who worked on the case from the beginning, would later say, "I've never worked on a case where the family were so proactive." Over the following days, Trevor's parents, siblings, and friends launched a massive grassroots campaign to find him. They put up hundreds of posters throughout Dublin, handed out thousands of leaflets, and went door to door and business to business, asking if anyone had seen Trevor or knew anything about his disappearance. The family's efforts extended beyond just putting up posters. They were instrumental in obtaining the CCTV footage that would become central to the investigation. Their determination and organization impressed even seasoned investigators, but despite their tireless efforts, the trail remained cold. The delay between Trevor's disappearance and the start of the search meant that vital evidence might have been lost, and potential witnesses might have forgotten crucial details. As the investigation progressed, the Gardaí pursued various leads and theories. The Sub-Aqua team searched the River Dodder and the Grand Canal, thinking that Trevor might have fallen into the water during the storm. However, these searches yielded nothing. They were unable to drain the Grand Canal basin because doing so would have affected the structural integrity of the surrounding buildings, leaving that area unsearched. One detail that emerged during the investigation involved Trevor's mobile phone. His sister Michelle mentioned that she had tried calling his phone several times during the weekend he went missing, and she believed that it had rung out rather than going straight to voicemail. This was potentially significant because, according to Dr. Philip Perry, a senior research fellow in the Radio and Optical Communications Laboratory at Dublin City University, a phone in 2000 would have gone dead within seconds of falling into water. However, Michelle later admitted that she wasn't completely certain that the phone had actually rung, adding another layer of uncertainty to an already complex case. The investigation also led authorities to Alaska, where Trevor had visited just weeks before his disappearance. Two Gardaí traveled there to speak with the girl Trevor had gone to see, hoping to uncover any information that might be relevant to his disappearance. Trevor's sisters also made the journey to Alaska separately for the same purpose. However, these trips, while thorough, didn't produce any leads that advanced the investigation. As the years passed, Trevor's case continued to capture public attention. The mystery of what happened to the young man who simply vanished on a stormy Dublin night resonated with people across Ireland and beyond. In 2015, a special documentary hosted by Donal McIntyre aired on TV3, bringing renewed attention to the case. The program, part of the Donal McIntyre Unsolved series, examined the evidence and theories surrounding Trevor's disappearance, keeping his story in the public consciousness. In December 2016, 16 years after Trevor's disappearance, the Gardaí opened a new investigation into the case. This renewed effort brought fresh eyes and new technology to bear on the evidence that had been collected over the years. The following April, enhanced CCTV footage was released to the public, and the Gardaí announced that they now believe the man dressed in black seen behind Trevor on the Haddington Road footage was the same man who had spoken to him outside his office earlier that night. This development seemed to support the theory that Trevor had been followed, and it led to increased public interest in the case. A reward of $100,000 was offered for information that could help solve the mystery, one of the largest rewards ever offered in an Irish missing person case. The substantial sum reflected both the seriousness with which authorities were treating the case and the desperation of a family that had been searching for answers for nearly 2 decades. In August 2017, the investigation took a dramatic turn when the Gardaí began searching a 3-acre secluded area in Chapelizod, a Dublin suburb about 8 kilometers from where Trevor was last seen. The search was prompted by information from an informant who alleged that Trevor had been murdered on the night of his disappearance by a Crumlin-based criminal known to the Gardaí. According to this informant, the alleged perpetrator was part of a gang involved in drugs and prostitution in the area where Trevor disappeared. The same criminal gang had previously been investigated in connection with the murder of Sinead Kelly in June 1998, adding credibility to the informant's claims. The informant suggested that Trevor and his alleged murderer had not known each other and that the encounter was entirely random, a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. This theory painted Trevor's disappearance as a tragic case of random violence, a young man who had simply crossed paths with dangerous criminals during his walk home. The search in Chapelizod was extensive and thorough, involving specialized equipment and forensic experts. However, while investigators did find a gun and drugs during the search, they concluded that these items were not related to Trevor's case. The site was described as a stash area for criminals, but it yielded no evidence that could help solve the mystery of what happened to Trevor Deely. The search was called off in September 2017, with the Gardaí stating that they had not found anything that would assist them in the case. Despite this setback, the investigation continued, and in December 2023, there was another significant development. Mark Deely, Trevor's brother, revealed that the CCTV footage from Haddington Road had been digitally enhanced using new technology, and the results had led to a surprising conclusion. The Gardaí announced that they had determined there was nothing suspicious about the movements of the man in black who was seen walking approximately 30 seconds behind Trevor in the footage. This man had been traced and interviewed, and investigators were satisfied that he was not a person of interest and was not the same man who had spoken to Trevor outside his office earlier that night. This development effectively eliminated what had been considered one of the strongest pieces of evidence suggesting that Trevor had been followed. However, it also meant that investigators were back to square one regarding the identity of the man who had waited outside the bank for 30 minutes before Trevor arrived. The case remains active, and in December 2024, the Gardaí again appealed for information relating to Trevor's disappearance, specifically seeking to identify the man in black who was seen standing outside the bank on the night Trevor vanished. As of June 2025, the Gardaí confirmed that the case remained a missing person investigation rather than a murder investigation, indicating that despite all the theories and leads over the years, there was still no definitive evidence of what had happened to Trevor. The disappearance of Trevor Deely represents one of Ireland's most enduring mysteries, a case that has captivated the public imagination for more than 2 decades. It's a story that touches on universal fears, the randomness of fate, the vulnerability we all face when we're alone in the dark, and the devastating impact that one person's disappearance can have on an entire family and community. Trevor was just 22 years old when he vanished, a young man with his whole life ahead of him, and his disappearance has left a void that has never been filled. For Trevor's family, the past 24 years have been a journey through hope and despair, following leads that seem promising only to see them fade away, and dealing with the constant uncertainty of not knowing what happened to their loved one. They have shown remarkable strength and determination, never giving up hope that someday they will get the answers they desperately seek. Their advocacy has kept Trevor's case in the public eye and has likely contributed to the continued police attention it receives. The case also highlights the importance of CCTV footage in modern investigations and how technology continues to evolve to provide new ways of analyzing old evidence. The fact that footage from 2000 could be enhanced decades later to provide new insights shows how investigations can continue to develop long after they begin. However, it also demonstrates the limitations of technology and evidence. Even with clear footage of Trevor's final known movements, the mystery of what happened to him remains unsolved. Trevor was just 22 years old when he vanished, a young man with his whole life ahead of him, and his disappearance has left a void that has never been filled. For Trevor's family, the past 24 years have been a journey through hope and despair, following leads that seemed promising only to see them fade away, and dealing with the constant uncertainty of not knowing what happened to their loved one. They have shown remarkable strength and determination, never giving up hope that someday they will get the answers they desperately seek. Their advocacy has kept Trevor's case in the public eye and has likely contributed to the continued police attention it receives. The case also highlights the importance of CCTV footage in modern investigations and how technology continues to evolve to provide new ways of analyzing old evidence. The fact that footage from 2000 could be enhanced decades later to provide new insights shows how investigations can continue to develop long after they begin. However, it also demonstrates the limitations of technology and evidence. Even with clear footage of Trevor's final known movements, the mystery of what happened to him remains unsolved. Trevor Deely's story serves as a reminder of how quickly life can change and how many questions can be left unanswered when someone simply vanishes without a trace. Somewhere in Dublin, or perhaps far from there, the truth about what happened to Trevor on that stormy December night in 2000 remains hidden. Until that truth is uncovered, his family will continue to search for answers, and his case will remain one of Ireland's most haunting unsolved mysteries, a young man who walked into the night and never came home. In the end, every shadow leaves its echo, and every tale lingers long after the last words fade. Thank you for walking this dark path with me. Until next time, be kind.